Hi, I'm Chris Waddell. Welcome to Living It. This is where we talk to experts in the experience of being human. The guy that we're going to talk to today, Bobby McMullen. Bobby and I ski race together on the U.S. adaptive team. I have to tell you, before we do his introduction, when we had to go to the training center, National Training Center, and we had to fill out the forms and it said, list broken bones and surgeries. It was a hassle to be behind Bobby because he took absolutely forever. This thing was like Bible size by the time. 2 kidney and pancreas transplants, 2 pacemakers, open heart surgery, 2 bouts of cancer, 3 years of dialysis, broken most of his bones. He also, later in life, went through 2 miscarriages with his partner. He's blind. He's a downhill mountain biker. On his website, it says extreme athlete, mountain bike racer, Paralympian, husband, father, and friend. We are going to get into all of that as we move through this interview. Bobby, I watched your movie. This was 2008, right? The Way Bobby Sees It. If anybody wants to go on a trip down the mountain with Bobby, go to YouTube, Google The Way Bobby Sees It. And one of the things that they did so well, this is approaching your race in Downeyville, one of the foremost downhill mountain bike race in the US. 5,000 feet of elevation loss, 800 feet of gain, 15 miles. And one of the things that they did that's so effective, because you don't see that well, right? I mean, I remember you telling me at one point early on that they diagnosed it at 20/1200, your vision. 20/1200, for those of you, so 20 is the distance that you have between you and the eye chart when you take an eye exam. 1200 is 140 feet short of a quarter of a mile. So what's that saying? At that point, you were diagnosed that what I saw at 20 feet, you were seeing at a quarter of a mile. I checked this out on my ride the other day, because I know from the stoplight to the final turn is a quarter of a mile. And there's no way that I'm picking up any 1 inch high letters. But you said that's not really accurate because you don't even see the chart. So you're not even on the chart. It's not 20/1200. It's just kind of like whatever. It's just, you just don't see. What they did well in the movie was they gave a sense of that cloudy, that blurry vision, and we felt like we were on with you. I told you before, I am not a fan of the POV camera. I want POV in small doses. But with you, it was this sense of impending doom. I have to apologize for this analogy, but it really was. It was the Mr. Magoo analogy, right? Mr. Magoo back in the day, where we watched Mr. Magoo, and he had no idea of what was going on, and things always worked out for Mr. Magoo, right? Everything, he ended up, he's driving his car and he drives off the highway and he drives onto the beam that's getting raised onto the skyscraper, and everything worked out for Mr. Magoo. For you, it's exactly the opposite. People talk about coming back bloody from a mountain bike ride, and that's a nature of a mountain bike ride. For you, that's 10, 20, 30 times greater. So when you don't see what's going on, my question to you, what are you thinking? Like, what are you thinking deciding, I don't see anything, I want to be a downhill mountain biker? What are you thinking? Why?
Well, I think you put it pretty well. I find it interesting when you use the term blind, and people immediately think in their heads, and I'll stereotype everybody on this, it's a guy with a cane, sunglasses, and a cup. And the reality is, when people think blind, they think totals. And that's about 10% of the population of blind people. The rest, the other 90%, have varying degrees of sight. And I will, I'll own it. People say, well, you're not totally blind. And I'll say, well, no, but I don't, I'm not. I just don't see very well. And then they're like, well, you can ride a bike, all those things. And my simple answer is, give me the keys to your car. I'll go park it for you. We'll figure that out. We've had so many fantastic discussions about motivations and why and what we do things, but why does anybody pick something and do it? Being active is always, prior to being blind, prior to health issues, obstacles, whatever we want to call them. I've always had the mindset that I'm going to lead an active life. And at 29, when I lost my sight, I took a beating emotionally. Life changed, and it changed immediately. And I basically, that moment I was told by a doctor in a phone call, and I drove home. And I had called Dad and said, hey, you want to meet me out in the front yard? I need to talk to you. So he met me out there. I drove my truck up.
Hold on, back it up. So what did the doctor say? What was the diagnosis?
It's a condition. I was diagnosed with a condition called proliferative diabetic retinopathy.
Okay. And so what happened? What does that mean? Because I don't understand many of those words.
Type 1 diabetics often have circulatory concerns in their hands, feet, and their eyes, their kidneys, or that certain parts of the body aren't getting enough blood. And for those that don't know, it is actually the leading cause of amputation, the leading cause of blindness, the leading cause of kidney failure, and the leading cause of sterility. That's type 1. And type 2 offers up some of the same awful side effects.
And you were diagnosed with type 1 at 12 years old, right? And had to monitor insulin, all that stuff.
Yeah. Took at that time, I was taking 4 shots a day, using a glucometer to test my blood sugar, like most diabetics do. The technology's much more advanced these days. The insulins are better, the delivery systems are better.
Hold on a second on that, because my wife just had to do some sort of a blood test. She had to give the screen, and she had to poke her finger.
Yeah.
And I said, back in the day, and I don't think it's the same now, but back in the day, you had to do that all the time, right? You were poking your finger, get a drop of blood to test the drop of blood, right?
Yeah. 4 times a day.
And then giving yourself shots in the stomach.
You typically rotate. You've got a couple zones in your body that tolerate injections better than others. It's usually outside of the thigh, about a hand size, stomach to stomach. I would be leg to leg, stomach to stomach, back to back, and then arm to arm.
Okay.
So you would use the back of the arm. It's anywhere you can pinch some flesh. And again, it's not an intramuscular shot. It's grab enough flesh to get between the layer of muscle and the layer of skin.
Okay.
So that's kind of, but yeah. And
you were an active kid. You played 4 sports as a freshman, right?
And 3 sports the rest of the time. People, their first assumption, which is, I think, incredibly, it's people don't know. They automatically think that you didn't take care of yourself. And I wasn't perfect. None of us are. I made mistakes with my care. I varied off the diet, but I never was in the hospital because of my diabetes. It was because of broken bones and doing other things. And I was checked at those times, whether it was concussions, ribs, legs, whatever. So my level of care was good, but it wasn't perfect. And you can attribute why that happened to a lot of different things. Diabetes sucks in any form. Type 1 is fucking brutal. And ask any person that has it, ask any person that is married to a father, mother of. It is a brutal disease, and you can manage it. It is manageable, especially with a lot of the great tools, the better insulins. But ultimately, in some cases, as in mine, my dad would have knock the crap out of me if I didn't behave in terms of Robert James, did you test? He held me accountable. My parents held me accountable. So did my sisters. The school I went
Well, then you
to,
said 6 sisters too, right? I mean,
uh,
you didn't get away with anything, did you?
I got away with everything. I was
Where
the
were
only
you in the
boy,
pecking order?
4 older, 2 younger. And
Surrounded. They had you
um,
surrounded.
they did. And you got a variety of personalities, interests, and as they grew older, different lives and different approaches to life, different parents, different examples of growing up, with that many parents. But we had, that many kids. Well, my parents were dynamite. I mean, how they managed. I mean, I've got one kid, and I still get up every night to make sure she's breathing. And I don't know how my parents managed it with 6 kids. And at 12, when I was diagnosed, even, also knowing that as an only boy, I certainly received a lot of attention and very positive attention. And when I became a diabetic, this is with great reflection and at 58 years of age, looking back and being an observer of what happens with people, working with people through issues in life. Looking back and understanding that I received even more attention because I was a diabetic. And my parents gave me shots, back to back. My dad made my breakfast almost every morning, to make sure I got the right, you know, uh, the right type of nutrition, which plays an important part in a diabetic's life. Going, and with 6 sisters, I had a great relationship with my parents and all the support, but so do my sisters in terms of the support they gave me. Their experiences with my parents may vary, may be very different in their perspective, but I was gifted from the beginning, and largely who I am is because of my parents and the support that I have. And I say that as a caveat to why I am who I am. And so I had they anymore. Say a kid's diagnosed with type 1 on a Friday. Their doctor, usually a GP, will just either a nurse will introduce them or a doctor will say, okay, this is what's going on. We checked your A1C, we checked your blood glucose levels. They're all elevated. You're going to start taking insulin. Here's your script. Go to the pharmacy. The pharmacy will show you how, but here's a 5-minute intro. And I'm saying this fairly tongue in cheek, but you'll understand when I tell you my particular process. So they give them to on a Friday night. They go home with a box of syringes and insulin and directions on how to eat.
Okay.
I spent 2 weeks in the hospital with a nurse who was a specialist in what at the time was called juvenile onset type 1. 2 weeks in the hospital with diet, with exercise, giving shots into oranges. I had, before I gave a shot to myself, I was shooting up oranges. Then I had to shoot up my nurse. Then I had to give my parents a shot.
Oh,
And then I had to give both of them before they ever and me, I never had an affinity to needles or gross stuff. As long as I can remember, shooting a shot, I was a rough and tumble kid, I guess, and that's not stereotyping being a tough guy now or whatever. It's just I was an only boy with a house of 6. My sisters would lock me out, and I'd go outside. But
that's where
that
you
experience,
gravitated. Yeah, you were a football player. You were you were the quarterback on the football team. Yeah, this is what you did.
that's what that's what I did. And so, the process is so much different now. The educational process is so much lacking. There used to be tons of diabetic care centers for education and support. And those are not, those came and went, lack of funding in many ways. In hospitals, the same thing. You're going to go in, you're going to have a nurse that helps you out. But back to what we were talking about, the care, how I ended up with sight loss. It's not an excuse. I own
Because
my
you'd
life.
managed it though. I mean,
I,
you'd come through. You felt like you knew what you were doing, right?
I was never in the hospital for high glucose levels or having insulin shock where I passed out. I always managed it, always carried a snack, took my shots, took my tests, and it still, well, fucks you up. It can. People also, there are great examples out there that you can find of people who have successfully managed their diabetes into their entire life. And there is definitely a double-edged sword to these stories, because what we too often hear is a tragedy. And first thing I want to tell your audience, our audience, is my life is not a tragedy. My life is not oh my God, that poor guy. There's nothing poor guy about me. And every experience I have in my life is just part of who I am. But going to what you're saying about when the sight loss, what the circumstance was, it was a condition of the eyes as a result of type 1 diabetes, where my eyes were not getting enough blood. And the body will send a signal, a chemical, to your eyes, which will induce it to start growing blood vessels to the back of the retinas to give it more blood. And this is, again, my terminology, my layman's explanation. So the eyes start getting this basically pyrocantha type of growth to get it blood, and then the body will shut it off miraculously when its job is done. But in my condition, with my particular condition, it never shut off. And so what happens is you get this overgrowth of these blood vessels, these tiny blood vessels in the back of your eye, and they started fracturing. And so when people talk about tracers, those little drops, those are typically blood vessels that happen to most people for stress or exertion or a lot of different reasons. Other eye conditions can cause it.
Like when you get the floaters.
Floaters, that's what they are.
Yep.
And
okay.
And in the movie, I talk about it, that all of a sudden I was getting floaters all the time. And it's funny, I'd watch them like whoop, 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 right in the bottom of my eye. And it just started filling up like a lava lamp. I could shake my head and those things would go around. So again, the eyes start growing like blood vessels like crazy. They fracture and end up basically draining into the eye, into the vitreous. That's the fluid inside your eye. And with enough of those blood vessels attached to the retinas, that will often tear the retinas back. And so what was going on with me, I was having and proliferative there's diabetic retinopathy, and there's proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Prolific is just what the word means, nonstop, unstoppable. And it typically happens with older diabetics. So me at 29 and in law school, it was not unheard of, but rare. And I got to really thank the guy. I went and saw an optometrist first. And I wish I could remember his name, because he deserves so much credit for straightening me out and saying, he could have gone a lot of different directions with the information he gave me. And he didn't. He just, in the middle of the exam, to get some glasses, because I was having this problem seeing. I was in law school, driving and seeing. I'm seeing all this crazy shit. And I figured, go get some glasses. And he stopped right away. He says, Bobby, I can't help you. You have a condition called this, and you need to see an ophthalmologist. And here's the guy to go see. And so they steered me to some guys in town that started getting after it with laser treatments. That's how they train. That's how they stop the bleeding of these micro blood vessels.
And did this guy, the first guy, the optometrist, did he tell you that you're facing, that you were going to become blind, or did he not tell you that?
He told me it was very this was a big concern, and that he didn't want. He says God, I wish I rarely forget this guy's name, because he did a great job at that moment. And a lot of people have been in these moments of holy what, and he did a great job, connected me, and the way he presented it was, this is beyond my skill set, and I wish I could help you, but I can't. But this is what I can do for you. This is what it's called. It's and basically gave me some real brief 2 or 3 sentences of related to my type 1 diabetes. Go see these guys. And the next day I was in the chair at an ophthalmologist. And
don't waste any time.
Yeah.
Get there, get it done.
Yeah. And then that's where it was kind of, I don't like to use the term grave, but it became a very, it catches your attention, because, you know, they looked in there and they started doing laser treatments, and you usually get one laser treatment on a, you know, handful of blood vessels when you see these bleeders with with retinopathy in its normal shape and form, or with prolific retinopathy. You can beat back by lasering these blood vessels to keep them from bleeding. Then you reevaluate your management of your diabetes to help get back to some normal level. So, and what happens with diabetics that damages the nerve endings, because the fingers, eyes, organs, feet, is because those are the extreme points of the body, your extremities. They have, you know, that's why they get cold easier one way or the other. Not your organs, of course, or your eyes, but they're very fragile in many cases. And so anyhow, they were doing like 800 an eye. Like, they did this for about a week, where they were doing 800 little zips in my eye to stop the bleeders, because my eyes were filling up with blood. And they couldn't see in there to see what the damage was, because there was so much blood. But they weren't anticipating having to do that many lasers. You know, it was so many that they would basically go to the next day, they do the other eye, and then they give you a rest day, and then they go back and try to stop others, and they could not keep up. And that's when, you know, Dr. You know, Lannon was a gentleman's name, says, Bobby, you're going to be a total in a month.
Total in a month. So what do you think at that point? He says, you're going to be a total in a month. Your whole life is active. You're reading, you're in law school. Like, is that a death sentence? What's your thought?
Well, you know, after talking to the original ophthalmologist, he says, you know, he did say, you're going blind and you need to get to these guys to help you out. And so that's that point where I drove home, and Dad met me outside, and I put both hands on my knees and I cried, and reached up, gave him a hug, and just said, Dad, I'm going blind. And he cried a little bit. I stepped back, hands on the knees, took some breaths, and put my arm around him. He goes, okay, let's go tell your mom. And we went in, and this is kind of my MO. You know, it was sitting at dinner, and, you know, just pretty quiet, you know, try to give them the understanding I had at the time of what was going to go on. And it's tough, very somber moment. But my parents, incredibly brave, as you know, having to deal with life-changing moments that they look at their child and go, what now? And I just remember the table, we had chicken, rice, and asparagus. And I would have dinner with Mom and Dad, and that was our go-to. Other than that, it would be pizza. And, you know, I remember Mom and Dad always drank champagne at dinners at that point in their life. They would toast champagne and say, you know, toast each other. And so I cracked a beer, because Dad had always had a couple of beers, and we sat, and, you know, and it's pretty quiet, and not a lot of tears at that point, because I have my mechanism for working through things may not be healthy according to professionals, but it sure works for me. Because I get pissed. You know, I'm driven by angst. I'm driven by, you know, anger. And I wasn't an angry kid or a tough guy. We get in a handful of fights growing up. I mean, people do that. But I didn't really realize how angry I could be and how pissed off I could be, not at somebody, but the situation. And I was able to take the background as an outdoorsy, fit guy that loved to do loved to ski, loved to stay fit, loved to ride bikes, loved to spend time with friends, golf, whatever it was. These are things that I've done and had planned to do my whole life. I was going to be a lawyer, probably a really shitty one. And to this day, I say, if things had gone another way in my life, I'd be divorced twice with probably 4 or 5 kids by these 2 gals, paying alimony, working every minute I could, and trying to hump your leg to buy a bike, to get a deal on a bike or skis. I'd be that guy.
Do you ever have those sliding door moments though of like what would have happened? I mean, you're just saying that, right? And that's certainly a worst case scenario. But if I
Yeah.
hadn't had to do this, what would I do? Do you ever have those moments or
I
not?
don't I don't have many because it's, it's one of those things that it's moot. It's a moot point that everybody can reflect on their lives, but for A, B, or C would not have, have happened, but for me losing my sight. And I get that riding my bike. You probably get that skiing. I'm sure every person in this life that's had to face a major change and pursues. God, Bobby, you ride so well, man. You would have been like awesome as if you could see. I'm like, probably not. Man, you're such a good skier. I mean, wow, what were you like when you could ski? I was not as good a skier. But it's very, I am sort of black and white about that. It's like, it's not a discussion I have.
No, because things have you've just done things that you're better now than you were before. Is there a message that if you could go back and talk to like the 18-year-old Bobby, is there a message that you would give that kid of like, hey, this is what's going on?
Wow. Hindsight in the life of a person with my health history based on the complications from diabetes, the obvious answer would be yes. But was I mature enough or smart enough? I was self-driven, self-motivated to do one thing: put a smile on my face at 18. I was at the JUCO playing ball, but turning into a snow skier, staying at my parents' house, and I loved it. Right? I was going to go to JC for a couple of years, probably go down to Chico, turn into a ski bum. You know, um, but at 18, I mean, I was very lucky in high school. I was good enough to start in sports. I was a reasonable enough student to get good marks. And I had a great relationship with my parents to where they say, you go to school, you can be under a roof. You decide you're going to work full time, you're going to pay rent. But that I had that relationship that, hey, coming and going with sickness and being busted up a bunch, my parents always had an open door for me. That's the relationship I had. And it was at 18. I would have never, no, looking back, was there a message? Well, sure. Look harder at managing your diabetes, be more educated at the time, and what was available then, that's volumes of discussion. One shot, only 2 types of insulin when I was diagnosed. How did that impact me doing one shot, 2 types of insulin since 1977 for the first 5 or 6 years? Did that have an impact? I'm not second guessing anything, and I'm not going to make an excuse.
Is that a message that most people would want to give to their younger self? I mean, the idea of like, or that we should, the idea of be more in control of your health. Take charge of your health. Yours is an extreme sense, but take charge of your health. I mean, you were fit, you were active, but be informed. Know what you're supposed to do. Is that something that most people would need to tell their younger self?
I think so, but who we were when we were 18, I mean, what would I have done different in 1,000 different ways? I probably would have pursued a couple of scholarships that I decided to go to the JUCO for. Had a couple of, like academic and athletic offers, one to Berkeley, one to UOP. And I decided to stay home. I mean, those kinds of decisions. But as far as our health as younger kids, oh, fuck. Chris, think about it. We still live with a sense of invincibility. Invincibility. We kids growing up, the shit that I did and walked away going, that was close. And that people ask, are you scared of what you do? Yeah, but I like that because that lets me know I'm alive. And I liked it at 18 and I love it still now. That moment of, all right. It's not It's not chemically induced. It's not alcohol induced. It's a moment in life that I really enjoy that feeling. People say, oh, you're an adrenaline junkie. But what would I say in terms of health? Kids are invincible. Look at them smoke pot, drive like shit, jumping out, jumping out of cars at 60 miles an hour and getting up and dusting it off. There's a magic. I know more than my parents. Yeah.
Well, this is because you talk about scaring yourself, and you've done effectively the biggest downhill mountain bike races in the world, right? I mean, Downeyville, you've done the Mega Avalanche,
Yeah.
Alpe d'Huez, which is what is 8,530 feet of elevation drop over 12 miles. And I watched some of these. These are narrow little trails. This is not some big fire road highway that you're going down these. This is some absolutely crazy stuff. You're talking about scaring yourself, which to me is I think a huge part of who you are. But in the movie, you said, because I'm watching this, I'm going, okay, how is he doing it? How is he doing? Because one, I mean, you talked about early on when you got onto a mountain bike that balance was hard. This is also, you said use soft hands. How do you do this? You said soft hands. You said, my dad taught me about soft hands. As a football quarterback, soft hands, you always want to be, and I'm like, okay, there is a component of soft hands, but there's something more to this. This trail serpentines down this mountain. It's covered in rocks. It's often a foot and a half wide. I mean, it's like as wide as the handlebars on your bike in a lot of places. It's falling away to this side. It's falling away to that side. And soft hands aren't going to do it. I mean, when I looked at this and I said, okay, this is sort of similar to being a skier, where the idea of being a skier is that you project your upper body down the hill, that you keep your upper body going down the hill. And what happens when anyone is scared is that you back off, right? You go from having the pressure on the front of the boot to sitting back to leaning in. And if you do that, it becomes cataclysmic very, very quickly. I mean, I watched you break ribs in this movie. I watched, take it right in the chest. I mean, I'm not sure how much abuse. I think you can take more abuse than pretty much anybody that I've seen. But it's something more. It's the question is, how do you have that commitment to going down the hill, to going down the hill? Because if you lose that commitment at all, your bike is going to slide right out from underneath you. How do you have the commitment that lets you say, this is what I'm going to do, when I really have no idea what is in front of me? You've got to have a pretty wide range, right? So how do you have that commitment?
I think it goes back to what we were talking back a few minutes ago, that, how did I process everything, and how do I experience such big changes? And I was, like I said, very active at 29, and I wanted to keep doing that. And that moment of sitting down with my parents and drinking a beer at a quiet table, I knew then what I was going to do. It's always looking forward to me. And what I knew I needed to do was like, all right, if I'm going to lose my sight, I'm not going to stop, one, being me. And the second thing was, I'm not going to stop any of the activities, any of the things, the way of life. I chose a way of life. And at 29, I knew who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. That did change the what part. But in terms of me, it was, I'm just going to have to figure out how to do these things, but it will be different. And at 29, I made a commitment to ride my mountain bike, to ski. And at the beginning of both of those, to stay outside, to play golf, whatever it was, it didn't happen. That sensation that you got to see I mean, this sounds so stereotypical and rhetorical, but it took hours and days of walking and practicing and touching and feeling, um, to learn a whole different way to do these sports. And people ask, well, gosh, you'd be a monster if you could see. No, I'm a better mountain biker now.
Why? Why are you a better mountain biker?
I I think it has a lot to do with the opportunities to do it a ton. Life changed a lot. The skiing, same thing. I got to spend quality time day after day with the best people in the world who were the best skiers in the world, coached by some of the best coaches I've ever been under. And that combined with, I love to train. To this day, we talked about that. Guys like us, what is our end game? Well, I still like to go do some hard efforts, right? That is something I enjoy to do. And it's the repetitiveness, what your body feels and touches. On the mountain bike, I ride some of the, and honestly, I ride some of the best equipment in the world. I do. I'll plug it. Santa Cruz bike, Sun Tour suspension, WTV tires, Census grips, all these things. I had the opportunity to work with these great people who produce great products that suited my ability. Remember, I'm only going about 60% of what most people consider an average speed. On a fire road, I can unleash the dogs and go straight line as fast as anybody. But things like you saw, I'm going about, like I said, 60% at my fastest. So the rates aren't there, but I have done a ton of work. I love to train to this day. And when you talk about balance, I relate it to skiing, a balanced position in skiing, a balanced playing basketball. Where's your center? You talk about your upper body. Well, your upper body, Lindsay Richter put it very well in a podcast I did with her. She goes, your boobs have eyes, your hips have eyes. That's where you'll go, and these are things that I pick up. I'm an addict to learn to do better at what I do. Golf, I missed a lot of golf balls before I hit my first one, but it was a matter of grooving and, the commitment to it. But I had support to put me in these positions. I had the drive to do it, and I had the time to invest in it. I got married at 50. All I did from 29 to 50 was try to make a living, which came to pass through putting some skis on, making it, or riding a bike, talking and working with people. Even this exercise, this is not an exercise. This is a conversation between two longtime friends. And yet, when I think of this, I want to give you my best. And I always have that. I want to give myself my best. Is that my best is not determined by where I finish. Because mine, riding a bike, that's a solo event, right? That's a singular event like skiing. But with skiing, as a visually impaired athlete, and riding, it's a team sport. I can't do it without you at that level. And so the gratification comes for me is that if I gave 110% and I rode well, then the result of all my hard work is just that sensation. I don't get, I've never been paid to win a race because I finished dead fucking last in so many.
But how do you have the commitment to, because it's almost, I mean, the commitment is even just to being on top of your bike, right? I mean, it's the difference between being on top of your bike and feeling like you're putting your foot down all the time because you don't want to crash. How do you have that commitment with this unknown where you're on this narrow trail and sometimes it's 50, 60 feet off of this trail if you go wrong? And so that's on the right hand side. How are you not hugging the left hand side going, okay, I just need to hold on to this so I don't end up there? How are you committed? Because your commitment is the thing that allows you to perform. But it's a huge barrier. It's a hurdle that everybody has to jump in order to be able to actually be moving and actually do what you're doing. How do you do it?
it takes reps, and you start in parking lots, riding in circles. When I first started skiing, I figured I was going to rip down that hill, right? Hell, I fell into the hill for an hour and a half. A 10-minute run turned into an hour and 45 minutes of literally tipping into the hill. My first bike ride was lower the seat, quad pod in that thing, feet on the ground, because I kept wanting to tip over. And it started literally in a, in a park, in a driveway. And then the
People don't
driveway,
realize how much your vision is connected to your balance. If you close your eyes and try to balance, you're going to be over in a heartbeat. Even if it's something that's super easy, and even if you're already riding your bike and you're moving and you close your eyes and you okay, and then it's like you have to catch yourself. And so this is what you're starting on in
well,
the
one
beginning.
eye, if you lose one eye, you're going to lose depth perception and also balance. Your body will adjust with time. And as you know, just the physiological changes you experience and anybody else that, people will say, oh God, you have these superhuman senses. Well, no, my hearing didn't get better. My sense of touch didn't get better. My sense of smell didn't. None of these things got better. You are born with a certain level. You are born with, if you've got great vision, you're born with it. You can't get it better. I don't all of a sudden, oh yeah, I've got superhuman smelling. It's that you use them more. And as I progressed riding a bike or skiing, that, all right, I made it down in a wedge all the way to the bottom on a run that took me, 10 minutes. Oh, I've improved. I did that in an hour and 40 versus an hour and 45. It's stubbornness, but also the thing too is that, I always say to people, it's much like one revolution. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do with it. And it's how you react and how you respond. And what are my physical gifts? I'm not inherently a great athlete, but I do like to train and practice. My greatest strength is I'm stubborn, and then I'm willing to get back up every time. And hours of riding by myself in my parents' driveway, dropping off a curb, pulling up on a curb, waiting to feel the curb. And you develop techniques, the local trails, memorization, but also unlike snow, you can go down that same trail 5 minutes later and someone kicks a rock out that could spin you off the front. And it's the realization of that, but not the focus of that. You know what my focus is? Getting sunburned teeth. I love movement. I love arcing. I love that. A little bump here and there, big bumps here and there. How do I do a jump? These are things where technique, communication with my guide, walking things, repetition in my technique, but also you hear this a lot, man. If that happened to me, I wouldn't do it. I wrecked my knee skiing. I'll never ski again. Well, hell, if I said that, I'd never been skiing with you. If I fell that hard on a mountain bike, I'd never ride again. I think falling down 7 times and getting up 8, a message that I learned from John McCarg, my junior year English teacher, had a plaque on his wall that his team used to be the football coach. And I wrote that down my first day in his class. You fall down 7 times, you get up 8. And I never knew how profound that would be, because I can go on a bike, on a ride, and I will find the one thing that can knock you off a bike, and it'll knock my ass on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like a magnet. You're going to find that thing. No matter where it is, you're going to find it. Do you have like a checklist when you get on your bike of like, hey, Bobby, remember this, like be, pointing down the hill, whatever it is. Do you have a checklist that kind of gets you centered, gets you ready, gets you prepared?
It's the feel I've developed of what I like in a bike and what's successful. How do I feel? Do I sit in the middle of the bike? Are my tires right? I go through a checklist with my gear. And if I feel something off, I'm a fanatic about seat height and bar position, and always. So that's where my first checklist is. If my gear is good, I have tons of confidence in what I ride. Balance. If I'm going into maybe a rhythm section or a section that might have small jumps, or a rocky section like what you saw in Downeyville is just right a creek bed for fucking hour and a half to 2 hours, man. Downeyville is harsh. They call it a downhill, but it's a downhill cross country race. You're pedaling and you're getting beat. It's constantly remind myself of position, the fundamentals. Get my hips behind the seat, keep my arms bent, push the bike out in front of you. These are mental checklists I do every time that I ride, but it starts with making sure, my health is good. It goes with making sure my equipment is set up, because that equipment allows me to do a lot of things. But I push that equipment to the nth degree when, you take, that slap that some people say my day's done. You saw in the movie a couple of, when I was rolling around the dirt, like, I kind of went left. I should have gone right. And, it doesn't feel like it's bleeding.
Well, it's not, I'll be all right. I'll be all right.
Yeah.
Just give me a second. Just give me a second, and so you're taking these huge hits. There has to be some fear at that point, of like knowing that something's coming, something that you're not seeing, that you're there's somebody swinging a baseball bat effectively. I mean, not literally, but figuratively. There's somebody swinging a baseball bat at you as you're going through, and like you're running the gauntlet as you're doing these. How exhausting is it? Are you just gripped the whole time? Can you relax as you're going? Is it just mentally and physically and emotionally just super exhausting by the time you're done? What do you feel like?
That's a really good way to put it, because that's a component of what I do that it goes to the reps, right? A lot of what I do, it's at a different level. It's like, anybody ever see a blind dog? They never miss a beat. You would never tell. You follow the pack, he'll jump into a window, but things become, that's how, there's an adaptation that occurs. Now, the emotional investment, yeah, a whole lot of, like ski racing, people would always say, Bobby, take a breath. And I swear to God, I'd hold my breath the entire run, and that's not, that leads to the tenseness. That's about, when you talk about the hands, it starts in my hands. And when I talk about soft hands, it's soft but firm. And it was an analogy I meant about raising a child. I don't think my dad was really talking about how to throw a football or a baseball when he talked about soft hands. Soft but firm. That it's, if you over grip and over tighten because of, that is a practice. That is something you have to remind yourself. Over gripping your bars tenses everything.
And then you're going to hit and you're going to go over. You're more likely to crash.
I think of when I ride, one of the things I remind myself is flow like water, Bobby. You feel resistance, use your arms. I run huge suspension bikes, front and rear, but I've got 18 inches of suspension in your arms and legs. That took me forever to make that as, practice. But, it is incredible, that relationship between the guide and myself. For a 4 or 5 minute true downhill, it's intense, because you're going I like going as fast as I can. I love going fast. It's at my level of that 60%. I love getting a little credit card air. A little jump is jumping off a curb is pretty cool to me. I love that
card. Meaning you're seeing a little daylight in between your tires.
Yeah. It's like, Bobby, you got some air, we can put the credit card underneath it. And I mean, that's very real to me, all these little sensations. But it is it's going out in public, using these other senses, just walking around. I am very aware, I'm with my daughter and not seeing real well. She's on a short visual leash, so to speak. She is 6 feet. And I am paying attention to anything and everybody. I can hear cars start up. It's not that I have superhero hearing. It's just that's my focus. My daughter, strangers come up, people I don't know. I am the worst person. You want to, look at this little girl, put hands on her. Like people would, want to, when she was a baby. I was aghast at how many people would want to come up and want to put their hands on my kid. And I've got him by the throat, and I'm like, who the fuck are you? Get away from my kid. And I still have that guardian in me, but forgive me for the tangent. It's just that the awareness on a bike like that, and focus from my guide and myself absolutely depends. And in the movie, good example of that moment of 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 controversy, that element that came up between JJ and I, that was a total distraction. And I meant that. I was not comfortable. Not that he would intend to do me harm, but if you're not on page, or if you don't believe in me when we're writing that stuff, you're going to have a miserable time. And you could very well, because you're always looking at me, where are you at? If I'm not communicating to you, that puts you at harms. I have to be on point. And all these things about emotionally, how do you feel? It's not a sense of relief. It's, if I have a successful run, I want to go do it again. And that's always been, why do I take a beating? Because I love riding my bike. I'm lucky to have these kind of passions. They happen to be active ones. But I think one of the things I think is a true tragedy is people don't do something out of fear. And I hear that a lot from visually impaired people, that I could ride a tandem, but man, I wouldn't want to try. I'm like, come on, let's pad up and go on some grass. Oh, no. I might fall. I'm like, no, you're going to fall.
There's no might about it.
Let's just learn how to do it together, and we'll tumble around and we'll find a place where you can succeed. And there are other visually impaired riders that are doing tremendous things. There's a group that does echolocation, and that ride with guides, and they ride their own bike. The echolocation is a technique that's been found to be successful for some visually impaired people, to literally emit a sound in this form of a click. I think they use their mouths. That's what I've observed in terms of how does that work. And the sound is like sonar, it bounces off things. And I don't know, you talk about something I can't understand, how that works out in the wild, because you don't have anything to bounce sound off. It may be some trees or some rocks. And my whole thing is know your space. I'll zigzag quite a bit to find width on the trail. I'll have walked it. I'll have ridden it slow. Know where the big features are that are immovable. Know your limits. If today's a day to walk over that rock on this ledge, then I'm going to walk over it. But there are people that will go on their mountain bikes, and they'll find the right environment that they've been successful in, and they'll use echolocation to, ride their bikes alone. Their kid.
But you follow your guide a lot. Your guide is talking
Absolutely.
the whole way. So
Yeah.
it's not echolocation, but you're following his or her voice as you're going down, which to me, looking at this, because you're talking about the tandem part, you're talking about that there are some people, but is there anybody else who's doing what you're doing on the downhill mountain bike side?
Not that I'm aware of. There's a lot of people, in disabled sports, the opportunities are growing almost daily with the types of sports, especially the fringe sports like skating, snowboard. We've seen this great growth. There's a total kid that rides a skateboard in a skate park with his cane. It's just fucking rad.
That's awesome.
There is. But in terms of you have the Paralympic Games, both Winter Olympics as well as the Summer Games, and though that venue is growing with different sports and opportunities, mountain biking, there's one other kid that lives in Park City.
Oh, cool.
And I'll give you his name. And Dave Barnhart is his name. Okay. And he started with the Michi's program there at the
National Ability Center.
Right. Ability Center. And he lives in Park City, and they'd moved out there to give this kid some opportunities. And they contacted me years ago, and I just kind of kept, in touch. And he just graduated high school. He sees, I think his vision's a little bit better than mine, but still very limited. And, to the extent that he was racing on his own, and he was really struggling for obvious reasons. And his kids are legit. His parents are great. And, one of the things I kept working with him on the few times I got to talk with him is like, ride with a guide, find that person. You will ride faster, better, and you will find yourself navigating these things. Use the sight you have and the skill set you have. I use sight and sound and my own skill set to do what I do. But this kid, he's was going to go off and to college and race for a smaller college. And he uses a very similar technique. But it wasn't until he didn't want to show people how different he was. He's a strong kid, great support, nice. I love him and his family. And it was, I think a lot of it was that, well, I don't want people to know I'm visually impaired. You know, he, like I talked about, man, I've worked really hard at being able to pretend I can see and live in a society that's sighted, a society that is built around vision.
We wondered that at one point, Bobby. I think it was at a pro race. There was a pro ski race at Winter Park. It was the first year that they did it. And the
Oh
Denver
yeah,
Bronco cheerleaders came up, and
what can I say?
you had a brief relationship with, I think, the most attractive of the Denver Bronco cheerleaders, and the rest of us are saying, I really don't. I think he can see. I don't. I think he's been lying to us for years. But
She sobered up.
she sobered up. Yeah, well, yeah. Maybe she couldn't see. Yeah, maybe that was the problem. Okay, but it's so you're talking about the guide thing, and with this kid, that the guiding actually makes you better, but it's also a complete flip in the relationship, right? You're talking about your daughter, that you are the guardian for
Yeah,
your
yeah.
daughter. That
But she's
relationship
now. Go ahead.
changes when you have your guide, right? Your guide is your guardian. Your guide is your eyes. Your guide has to make sure that you are on his or her wheel, that you are protected, that they're giving you the right instructions as you're going down. How exhausting is the experience of the guide? I mean, you'd have to tell me third hand, obviously, because you haven't guided, but then also creating that relationship and ensuring that you guys are on the same page.
Well, the guide skier, the guide rider relationship is absolutely critical. And you know, there are people that are great guides, and there are some that may not be great guides. There's good and bad ones. Um, and you know, you don't have to be a great racer or a great rider. You have to be a great communicator. And I have found that in most cases, women are outstanding guides across the board, from the highest level to a sport or beginner rider, because one, they're very empathetic, meaning there is no ego. They are there to help me and understand what I'm going through, but also they're great communicators and they're very coachable. They are willing to learn and put their egos down. Sometimes men, not so much. And when you get going with certain people, you know, there's environments where I've been in where the person loses track of what they're doing, and they keep saying to me, keep up through here. And it's not my job to keep up with them. I ask a lot. You're donating your time. You're donating a day or a moment you could be riding on your own. And you're also giving me, you know, you're allowing me to experience my life. And I don't care who's ever guided me for however long or less. I'm eternally grateful for allowing me to live my life. And being on two wheels, good or bad, getting smacked around, whatever, but they're there to allow me that. No matter how difficult or simple the ride might be, it is a gift. And they're taking away from their life. Time is the most valuable thing we have because we never get it back. And people have donated hours of time to put me in the position to live the life that I choose. What a gift.
Why do they do it?
Many are curious, just curious, like how I do it. A lot of people like, yeah, I didn't really think you could. I actually could. I thought you could see better than you were letting on. And they're, you know, after an experience of guiding, like, dude, you can't see shit. You know, it's kind of like, you know, being with people. You know, unless you're around me, you know, damn, you fake like you can see really good. But after spending a couple days in their home, like, dude, you got to leave. You're knocking too much shit off the shelves, kind of thing. And that's more tongue in cheek. But people, it goes to a lot. I think when you had that moment in the parking lot, do you let someone help you with the chair or not? Why? What are their motivations for doing it? Well, I think inherently people want to help. I do. and they want to, maybe they know someone, maybe there's something in their past that says, I'm going to lend a hand. Maybe they're just inherently good, like I hope all people are.
In the movie, the guy said, the announcer, was saying at one point,
I,
do you know where I'm
right.
going with this?
I think so. Go ahead.
The announcer said, we've got our special friend Bobby.
That's exactly. I cringe every time I hear that. Special, and the way he says it. He's a great guy, by the way. That Downeyville crowd, that scene is
And he
so
means
cool.
nothing by that. He
No,
means nothing, but we hear something, right? We hear something.
is that our special friend? Wink, wink.
It is. But what's your role what's your role there? What's your role, and what do you want them to see?
Um, I I didn't get into sport after I had a life-changing moment. I didn't quit sports after time and time again picking my shit up from being near death, being sick, having transplants. I invest into my life and lifestyle. It is healthy for me. I have no regrets. And when I go out, it is not, don't be mistaken, it is not, I have great support from the industry, but take all the support away, I would still want to hair it out. I would still ride and invest in bikes. I love it. And the opportunity to have these organizations. I mean, made a lot of calls to the Sea Otter. We had to lobby to get me into the Mega Avalanche and send them tapes, because people say, well, Bobby's blind, and you have to explain what that means. And then they're like, well, this is a little more complicated than, riding a fire road.
This
And
is a
it's like,
real race. Maybe that blind
yeah,
guy should go do something else.
yeah.
Right.
And it's not, I don't mistake me for the person who gives a fuck what you think about me and my riding bikes, because I love it. I love to ride. I love to ride as much now as first time I ever threw a leg over a bike. I love the feeling of it. It is my expression. It is my art. It is my sense of individuality. It is my independence. It really is. And to experience that in the venues that I've had the opportunity, like Downeyville, I love getting to Downeyville. I spent a lot more time there in previous years, but once or twice a year, man, Downeyville. If you haven't been there, people that might listen to this, it's like, oh no, I remember being there. It's spectacular. It's raw. It will, and what's comical, people will say, oh yeah, we watched your movie, yeah, you can, but we're really concerned you can't do our downhill course. I'm like, did you watch Downeyville? I I don't want to be cavalier, as I should probably take back that I give no fucks what you think of me and my writing. It is, my motives are very simple. I love riding bikes. I love the feel. It is a great feel. There is nothing better than just feeling yourself flow up and over terrain. For me, it is a sensation. It's that I enter races like that because there's nothing that makes you do stupider things than putting a number plate on. Nothing that makes you go harder. Nothing that makes you bleed through your eyes or challenge yourself. Nothing that makes me ride something that I would otherwise probably walk down there than putting a number plate on. And no runner that's ever run a race would say like, oh man, I'm ready to puke. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to lose, or and they find themselves like, oh my God, I love that level. I love going to that next level. And I love it.
And that's when you're alive. That's what you've said, right? This is where you're most alive, is when you're.
I think most alive. I'm alive every morning. I've been gifted with an incredible. The gifts I have are those that I've learned about later in life. Is that I don't get depressed. And I told you earlier, I get pissed off. Now, the psychologist could say, well, that's your mechanism. You're actually depressed. He's going to try to talk me into it. No, I wake up and I am a pathetic mess. Hi, honey. Blah, I'm a little sore today. I'm going to limp because my back's, but I'm going to kiss my kid. I'm going to make coffee. I'm ready to go. I love being alive. I don't know if there's a heaven. I don't know what happens. I think you're just going to kick dirt on me and cry a little bit and be done with it. That's fine. But for me, what if this is heaven? What if this is all we got? I'm not going to let fear or a change in my body to prevent me from doing what I love. I've always been active. The way I've been able to put a number plate on, it's not, I'm alive every day, and I wish I could give this to people. The bike and skiing, or jumping off a little cliff, playing golf, driving a golf cart, these allow me to be the person who I said I was going to be when this happened. I will not change who I am. I will not. And I'm good at me. That's the best thing I can do. I'm the best at being Bobby McMullen. But being on a bike, those are things I loved before. Who would have thought I'd been able to do it full time at 58? Then have a beautiful kid, have these conversations that might affect lives. This is being alive. Being able to ride is that icing on the cake. It's that passion that I hope everybody has.
Is that what people see? Because it's impressive. I mean, you mentioned your sponsors with Santa Cruz Bikes, with WTB Wheels, with SR Sun Tour components, right? Your derailleur and stuff like that. Cali Protection, Lazine with a variety of different products. You are sponsored. I mean, you're 58 years old. The likelihood of someone 58 years old being sponsored, but you're sponsored by these great companies. Is that why they come to you? Why do they come to you? Because of what you just said, do you think? Or
I got a big boost up early after my second transplant in 2003. I was dating a girl, Therese Connor, who was interested in racing bikes. And I impressed the hell out of her because I was on dialysis, and she was actually a dialysis nurse that I worked with. And I invited her on a bike ride to guide me. And she had this old bike that her brother gave her. She was so impressed I could change a tire. Yeah, she's like, I didn't think you could change a tire.
You do what you got to do to impress.
Yeah, and then and then the relationship evolved. But there was a point where she wanted to race, and I thought, all right, I'll go. And so the first race we went to, I'm not good on the sidelines at that time. It's like, I don't care if I finish DFL. I'm going to get one of my ski guides, which I did, and I'm going to show up the next race. And the next race, it was pouring down rain. It was shitty, but I finished DFL and had a blast. And then we talked about, well, let's go to the rest of the series. Let's go to this thing called Sea Otter. And there's this place called Downeyville, these magical places. And I understood from my ski experience that, hey, none of these are cheap. And maybe I could parlay my ability to establish a relationship, show what I've done on skis and what I want to try to accomplish. So I threw out some resumes and made some phone calls, and this guy named Mark Weir bit. And Mark Weir man. I mean, there's a legend and a Hall of Famer in his own right. Guy won Downeyville like 8 times. And I sent him a note and said, hey, I'm just trying to get a couple seats, some tires to offset expenses. It was a harmless, yeah, I'll see what I can get. And a couple weeks later, I got everything in their lineup for both of us. And then he made introductions to Rob Roscott, and later on to many other quality people who found value in what I did. And it was that, what is that value? Well, you're going to have to ask them. But sponsorship is a lot of things. And a lot of times it's traditionally focused on results, right? Winning podiums, whether you're a Paralympic athlete or an able-bodied athlete. Podiums garner attention. Products, the virtual NASCAR, Ricky Bobby. I want to thank, and I got to thank, but it's true, they help offset expenses by providing gear or maybe a financial component. But that process basically of taking a chance and writing and happened to have a guy like Mark Weir answer me. He in turn introduced me to good people that were interested in my story. Very unique. I mean, if people were to look into me, they'd kind of go, yeah, that's pretty unique. What I do is different. I don't know that there's anybody that races downhill following a guide. There's a kid in Europe, though, that's tossing, he's a VI, he's got albinism. and he's tossing some cool jumps. There's other people coming into play that I I don't know where he got his motivation, but it's great to see. And in my instance, it was I'm unique to this day for the Pandora's box of health and stick-to-itiveness that helps them in some way.
Well, I mean, you talk about podiums, right? And podiums, and you've got winners, but the thing is also you are coming down last generally.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes, like in the Downeyville that you did for the movie, you beat 8 people. So you
yeah.
passed some people along the way. I mean, that was in the movie there. And oh, hold on, Bobby just passed someone,
Well, I gotta tell
and
you,
the crowd goes quiet. I mean, that crowd it's a crazy crowd. It's a
okay,
huge celebration for everybody. And
real
then
quick,
you're
let me
coming down. It's
go ahead.
like, hold on, we've got to see this. We've got to see this. I mean,
Yeah,
you're an anomaly in some
I
ways,
am.
but it's also I think it's a representation of, like, I wish that I could do it. I mean, a lot of people are looking at you going, wow, I wouldn't do it. Or I wish that I could do that. You're a reminder for a lot of people of the person that they want to be, which to me is what's important about your sponsorship. Why you're providing that value, and a greater value in a lot of ways.
That's right on point. Is that, like I said, I've been with a couple of these companies for a long time: Santa Cruz, Cali, Lezine, Crank Brothers, Cliff, Wiley. They've been with me for a long time, and it's that I met amazing people who happen to have great products. They are that they may, some people, like, I'm of no value. Well, that's neat. That's a novelty. And I like to think that with my tenure in mountain biking world, I've created my own niche, and people will see value in that, because I can't say, well, give us your top 3 races from last year, send us some content. Well, my life is content, depending on how we choose to use it. um,
How do you stack your top races up, though? I mean, give us your top 3 races. I'd imagine you look back and go, that was a killer race. That was my best race. Do you have that race that you say that was it?
so many of them. I mean, it's the uh, do we give medals to kids for participating? Because a lot of people look at what I do as like, oh, that's neat, he's doing that. And I want to say, go fucking try it. You go ride Downeyville, you know, you go this, and that competitiveness. But I understand where my abilities are and my value. My favorite events, I could pick any of the Downeyville races I've done. And I would always try to do both the cross country and the downhill. And while I did the Xterra Worlds and I did race across America, I'll tell you what, Downeyville 2 days in a row, the cross country, and then the downhill is the meanest thing I've ever done to myself. Combination of crashes, intensity, literally, that's a place you can die. Like Mega Avalanche. My sponsors got me over there. I not only got to do the Mega Avalanche, I got to ride in one of the first enduro races Europe ever had. And I fell under the wing of the one and only Brian Lopes, who's one of the greatest athletes ever, one of the greatest cycling guys ever. Super intense guy. And some people have their misconception of this guy. I spent, a week with this guy, and only English speaking, so to speak, Americans at this event. That experience is that, what people say, oh gosh, you participated. I'm like, no, I'm going out there to get the best time I can. I am literally racing and I have limitations. It's that, really, you think I see that? Well, why did it take me 2 hours versus the winner who did it in an hour? Come for a ride with me. I don't need that proof. I don't do these things because I lost my sight or because of these things. I don't do it for attention. It's because I really love it, Chris. I've always loved putting a number plate on. I still love going with people, going to the top of it and finding some rugged downhill trail to see if I can do it without putting a foot down. I still love the challenge.
That's the thing that I saw in the movie, right? Where there was the place that you cleaned. You went through one section on the Downeyville course, and there was this complete sense of euphoria. I've
Yeah.
never done that before.
Oh,
And I'd imagine that is different than this is the fastest time. I mean, you're probably looking and saying, okay, I'm racing against myself to a certain extent. And if I'm 30 seconds faster, if I'm a minute faster, hey, that's a good thing. But it's also, can I do that? Because for you to clean certain sections is is spectacular. I mean, is absolutely amazing. Like you think, some of these things are so technical, and people who are seeing are thinking their way through it. And you just have to have like, okay, here's the plan. This is it. I'm following the plan, and I hope that it works. There's a lot of hope in what you do, and sometimes that hope ends up on the side of the trail
yes,
in blood and
absolutely.
broken ribs.
Well, that old adage, what you don't know doesn't hurt you. Well, and sometimes in my situation, what you can't see doesn't hurt you. And in that particular spot, I've had a lot of those spots of like, I'm going to walk this, I'm going to walk this, and I'll keep walking it. And then the moment is right. And it comes with understanding bike, tire pressure, approach, speed, and consequences. I could go back to that spot today and would probably have to walk it a couple times to feel comfortable, because that one spot in the movie that's early on that shows the highlight, it's about a 60-foot get off to nothing but rock and water. And there was in the filming in that same spot, I was approaching it and I literally fell off. My bike stayed on and I'm clinging to the side. They're screaming. Jason and Wendy are screaming at me. And I'm like, I got my bike. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And they're wanting to rush and help. And I'm like, slow it down. Don't push anything off. I mean, literally, I fell off and clinged to the side and got back up.
This is Wile E. Coyote.
Pretty much. But there is, I love that sense, hitting a jump where I get the backside of a table, a little bit of credit card air. Guys are boosting big air. You see Kohut and what he does. That is so cool. But man, a little bit of air like that sense of that. I hope everybody has that in their successes. For me, it is that move. But oftentimes, often have to be smart enough to say, not today.
And it depends on the guide, right? Because you
Oh,
had the issue with JJ there, and you're talking to Wendy about guiding, and you might not have seen this. This might be a detail that you missed in the visual acuity side of things. But you were talking to Wendy, and she had a lip quiver.
I didn't know that.
When she was talking to you about guiding, where she said, Bobby, I really don't feel comfortable doing this. I don't feel like,
Certainly hear it.
oh yeah, no, it was, I mean, there was a distinct lip quiver as she's watching, because she's in charge for you. She's going to have to help you. And that is, it's a teamwork thing.
She was a good guide too, though. She was good, man. We ripped.
Oh, I'm sure she was, but it's also, she has to be prepared and prepared mentally in order to help you, or else she's not going to be any good to you. If she can't indulge in her fear and still be useful to you. She has to be able to make proactive decisions the whole way down, which is a really challenging thing.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier about, what the emotional investment people make when they guide me. It is definitely, people get done, and the two things in a successful ride, no matter if it's a shorter run or a day of cross country, they'll go, oh my God, I am just burnt out.
Yes.
And they'll also add, that was the coolest thing I've ever done on a bike.
Right.
Very, very double-edged sword, because I do realize, what, in the length of an hour and a half cross country race, chances are somebody's going to say a left when it needs to be a right. These mistakes happen, or they don't, it's more information to be able to talk, have a conversations of left, 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 right, 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 right. How's the weather? How's mom and dad? Right, right, right. Pull up, pull up. That for a downhill is intense and tough because of the speeds and maybe the obstacles, but just, a ski race, 2.5 minutes, a ski run, a couple minutes long. But on a bike, on a ride, on a road ride, I can sit in, follow a shape, stay left, stay right, sit in, pull through, pretty basic. And so the communication, unless you're going downhill really fast, is not limited, but not as intense. If you look at a downhill ride of any kind, you know, I fall off going uphill more than I go downhill because you kind of sit in, you're bumping around, and I'm not doing any speed. I'm super slow climbing, and I'll wander off because I'm not paying attention. I won't follow them, and oftentimes we'll just be having a conversation, and I will find myself riding off the side of the trail, or hitting a little rut that knocks me over, and then it's comical. But when it's time for us to strap it on and point it down the hill or get moving, it is very intense, and it is on the guide. But when I find myself talking to you on a ride, when we are literally just having a downhill run, and I hear the subtext of the conversation of, okay, soft left, pull up, in between conversation, that's when I'm riding my best. I'm not worried about following. I'm hearing the commands. I've done the work. So my body's doing it's intuitive, and I get to enjoy riding my bike. That's when I can see.
That's the thing. Yeah. That's a big thing. Like I talk about that in skiing. It's where I forget that I'm sitting down. This is when you can see that. Wow. What a moment. That is.
It is just that. It's that you get kind of a flow in a conversation as well as with flow in your body, and it becomes effortless. All that repetition, all that muscle memory that you've had instilled at whatever level you've done it becomes second nature, and the conversation becomes about us and not about guiding. I'm not worried about, I'm talking with Chris, my buddy, as we hard left, hard right, and then we're right back into talking about the new house or mom and dad or something else on our plates. And then it's pull up. The conversation, it becomes intuitive. Those commands become something we begin just flowing with, just like the riding becomes a flow, kind of a flow state that people use. And I love that, flowing like water. That I'm not, what did he say? Is he too far ahead? Is he checking his speed? I'm off. It becomes the gap is consistent. You've mastered the where I need to be and where you need to be. That if I say I'm off, you sit up and you don't break without the discussion, without a focus on right, left, pull up. It's just a simple, low-key conversation, not yelling. Man, that's when I come down and I forget that I don't see very well.
That's the payoff too, right? You
put it is, absolutely.
All the work in, all the crashes, and you go, oh, this is perfection. You talked about golf. Like that's that one shot, right? That one shot that you go, oh, I've totally figured it out.
That's why we play the game.
Back the next time.
Why we play the one shot.
It gets you going. Wow, that's awesome. You talked about before that you have to continue to keep to scare yourself. There's a part, what in the past, what was when you scared yourself the most? When were you most scared?
From sport or life?
Life in general. Yeah, I mean, whatever, you go wherever you want to go on this one.
I have a 6-year-old daughter who is my world. And I would never, people could, I've got sisters, I'm an uncle. But until I had my daughter, I had no idea what life feels like. I love the life that I've had athletically, absolutely unimaginable. And I'm so thankful for every opportunity. And as we get older and slower and, a little bit more cagey, I have an appreciation for it. Understanding that I will never be back 10 years ago, but I can still scare the crap out of me today. With my daughter, I've been sick a lot, as you know, and during this COVID, it's very concerning for me. Not, I do still feel invincible. I feel like maybe I actually had it back in January, and breeze through it. But that's my own belief system of I'm invincible. And
You're with a lot of other people who've
I
thought
know,
that they've had it.
but
You know.
I take precautions to protect others, as well as I hope they take precautions to protect others. But with my daughter, there was a point where I had pneumonia. I've had a number of cases of pneumonia. I probably had severe pneumonia probably 10 plus times. Hospitalizations, shitty ones like, respirators. And, but that's a part of me too, is like, whether I snapped it off and have a broken femur, I ask when can I get back on my bike? I'm looking forward to getting back to my way of life. And that dialogue, internal dialogue's changed to, if I've been sick or have something done, it's changed my thought process to when can I get to see my daughter and my wife, of course. But there was a time where I'm pretty stubborn and I can function at a really high level with pneumonia. I'm not too proud. If I want to get to the top of a hill on a given day, I'll put a fucking foot down and walk up it to get some vert in. And I was really having a tough time breathing. I was going to go to an enduro. And, I muscled through low level cases of enduro, get some antibiotics and charge on. My tolerance level was really good. This was a little different. I was having tougher and tougher times breathing. I was up in Reading. I was going to go to the Ashland Enduro, dropped off some product for Cali, some prizes. And I remember sitting there wheezing like I had a wet blanket over my face and went, I can't do this. I need to go home. And my sister and her son had driven me. And I, called my buddy Andy saying, I can't do the enduro. I need to get home and just heal up. I got as far as my sister's house in Anderson, where I stopped and saw her, and she goes, "Dude, you look fucking terrible. You need to go to a hospital." And I'm literally like bent over trying to breathe, but I'm gonna go home. And I got in the van and I said, "Take me to the hospital. Let's go to Mercy." So I was in Reading and diagnosed with lungs full of fluid, with a pretty good case of pneumonia, and going through a bunch of tests. And they started talking about, my heart has been irregular, obviously the pacemaker and some surgeries have kind of upgraded shit. But, there was some irregular arrhythmias, and they started talking about heart stuff. And I'm like, no, it's pneumonia. That's what's causing it, and so I wasn't comfortable because I wasn't under my plural doctor's cares. If I'm at CPMC in San Francisco, these guys know me. They know my capabilities and my strengths as a patient, which we all have. I understand. I understand I understand my health. I understand what it takes, but I also understand what's going on with my body in 99.9% of cases. And I knew that, yeah, I do have an abnormal heart rhythm, but it's probably being induced by this severe case of pneumonia because I need to get this. Anyways, they plugged me in, and my O2 levels were really low. And I started thinking, like, I am not going to fucking die here. If I'm going to die of pneumonia, I'm going to San Francisco. And I started making some calls, and I was telling them, because I started having an uptake. I started feeling better. I was getting out of bed, still breathing, still some fluid. This is about 4 or 5 days. And they were like, "We're not letting you go, not in your shape." And I'm like, "You guys don't understand. I'm going home to see my kid. Because the way you're talking, if I'm on my way out, I'm not dying here, and I'm not dying without seeing my wife and my kid." And I was fucking scared. And how did I respond? I responded with intensity. It's like, you cannot. I mean, I've never done this, and I was finding myself because I just wanted to go home. If I'm going to die with pneumonia, fuck, I'll die at home or I'll die at SF, so at least they can see me. But I'm going. And you can help me do that, or one, I'm going to call. And I mean, you have the right as a patient, you have certain level of rights. And, I was like, you can't keep me. I can discharge myself. That's a fact. And I was cognizant. I was aware. I was cerebrally intact. And I said, "Tell you what, you can hook me up with some oxygen if I need it, or I'll unplug myself and call a cab." And so all of a sudden the doctor has to show up, and then someone's calling, then they're bringing in some counselor. And I'm like, you know what? You better get me a hospital admit, because you guys are all out of line. And now you're preventing me from leaving, and I'm going to leave. And I was doing this based on that fear. That scared the shit out of me, that I was going to go leave this world. Not that I was afraid for myself. I'm comfortable with the idea with my life. So many times being near that point of getting a dirt nap, that, you know, I don't have no regrets about my life and who I am. With my daughter, man, it's changed. And that was my first realization of what that really meant to me, is that it wasn't about, I'm going to bounce back from this and get back riding, Chris. I'm going to bounce back and get to that, you know, being Bobby again. It was, I want to see my kid. Because if it's as bad as you say, that to me, that is a whole different level of angst and fear. I don't consider myself, I don't fear life. Never have. A life shut down because you're afraid of things is a life lost.
Does that change some of the risks that you're willing to take? That now that you are a husband and you are a father?
You know, there are people that will call me out in a lot of different ways. And on stage, people, do you understand what you're risking? I've had 2 double organ transplants. There's not really much better gift. I've won the lottery twice. I'm on my 2nd pacemaker. Do I have an appreciation of 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 9 lives plus as my mom?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
You're hoarding them right now. Yeah.
Yes. But when I'm in my element, I have an incredible level of confidence. That, what we didn't talk about, is that confidence in yourself and trust in yourself and trust in those around you. 2 things that people don't talk about or have anymore. People don't trust themselves. They don't believe in themselves. I have an unequivocal trust in my abilities and my ability to evaluate risk.
So you're taking good risk, is what you're saying, that you're.
Yeah, always have. Always have. And that if I stop doing these things at that level, whatever level I might be doing it now as a 58-year-old an ambassador, guy who likes to ride all the time, that's blind, and has pacemakers. I mean, most people don't know that, and people will go, "Hey, you're really good. You ride your bike really well. You know, you may not go uphill very well, but I ride my bike fairly well." I do have an unequivocal trust in the people I surround myself with and myself, whether that's in life and life experiences or what I choose to do. But I also trust in myself to be able to pull back the throttle a little bit, not take that risk, maybe not ride that line, or maybe put a foot down. Does it have to do with being a dad? I don't think so, because I've always had it. But
it hasn't changed.
Ask me after I fucking snap it off. You know, I don't think of that as an inhibitor for me. What I think of it as, if I changed who I am, greatest compliment I get, 58 years old, is, "Bobby, you haven't changed a bit since I knew you when you were in high school." Wow.
And is that the case? There's not a sense of carpe diem, of your clock ticking a little bit faster than other people's clock, and things you need to do and want to do, and is there anything that you're looking at, right? I mean, you're alive right now, and Ella is what, 5, 6?
Yeah,
and
6.
and 6, and I'd imagine there's the juxtaposition of living life, of making sure that you're healthy, and wanting to be there for her, and wanting to be there for those moments, right? That you're looking at high school graduation, college graduation, the wedding, these kinds of things, right? And how does that inform the decisions that you make on a daily basis?
These are things I do think about, but I guess the context that I evaluate my life with is that, man, I don't care what anybody believes about COVID. That shit's real. It's killing people and it's making people sick. Right. And, God bless you for whatever religious, connotation you want to make about that. But if you don't, or you don't think it's that bad, but it is. And I know that based on experiences with my doctors. And You know, I'll be that person you should not say, well, you just stay home, not me. I'm like, all of us should go out. Just put a fucking mask on for 30 minutes of the day if you go into a market or you're going to, it's not that hard. But for me, it's like I'm an extreme social distancer right now because it's that I'm very aware that could change. Yes, my health every day. You know, make sure I see my doctors, make sure I maintain my medical regime, my pharmaceuticals are in line, you know, the meds I take, make sure I'm staying healthy. But part of my mental health is to continue to live the life I have at 58. And that is changing, that dynamic's changing. It is frightening to think that going downhill, I am faster than and riding better than I ever have. It
That's
is.
awesome.
It is. And the confidence that I have. Now, like I said, ask me after I'm, you know, and I splatted a couple times in the last couple of weeks, but it was, you know, it was stuff, not my fault, you know, transitioning from a fun dirt ride to another fun dirt ride. And we had to be on the road and there's some cars behind us. And I wanted to get over to the side a little bit more and my guides, you know, in front of me. And anyways, I got hooked up and they had raised the road through a new, you know, surfacing. Slapped right in traffic. And I'm like, what? Don't run over me. But bounce up, I'm bloody, I'm bruised, but, you know, I'm fine. I mean, that was, point being is that I am very aware. I want to be here forever, dude. I will fight. You know, if I end up on a machine, don't let anybody kick the plug because I'll come back.
Interesting.
I will come back.
Is that the story that you're telling Ella? I mean, Ella's your daughter, right? And you've got to
Yeah.
pass on all of this experience and wisdom to her, right? Is that the story that you're telling her?
Well, that is a great question. Um, I'm trying to share with her who I am in a sense that when she grows up, she's in for a lot of surprises. When she may find out the different things that I did under the circumstances, just like anybody's kids will. I want to be a dad. I want every day to be an experience about her. My job is to be here to give her the guidance as a father, as long as any father wishes to be, thick and thin. I am older. We had her when I was 52. That in itself, culturally and socially, puts on maybe, you know, people make people think about it, you know, but who I am goes to exactly conversations we've been having. Who I am is not what I do, or being blind Bobby or the blind mountain biker, or, you know, Bobby McMullen, who did these had these amazing adventures. I had amazing adventures. I'm Bobby McMullen who happens to be blind and had some other stuff going on in his life. I am Bobby McMullen who's been lucky enough to have these adventures. I want her to know her dad. Those things, neither does my health. I don't identify with all the health issues and bumps and bruises and up and down. I identify with being your friend, Chris. Most of all, I identify with being a father and a good husband. And none of those things, they're the sum of the parts, but they are not the key parts of me. The key parts of me are my heart and my investment in people. I hope that they sense that. My friends, that I'm a good guy. And when they observe later on, that if my daughter looks over me when you kick dirt over me, hopefully later than sooner.
Later, let's postpone
Yeah,
that as long as we
let's
can.
push, and I will. That's the key, right? But that you and her can look at each other and say, my dad was a good man.
And that's a product of your experiences, but it's also
absolutely, it's a product of who I am.
I mean, this is you passing on what your parents taught you too.
Mm-hmm. And I want her, I don't care who she loves or how she loves. I don't care if she plays any sports or skis or chooses art or chooses just to be I want her to be happy, love herself, respect herself, and be a productive member of our community and our life and our world. And all the other bells and whistles that we stumble across, good and bad moments in our life, she will discover those. She'll discover who she wants to be. And I don't ever want to put her in the position to have to live up to some level of stupid ass toughness that people often, oh boy, you got to be a really tough guy. No, I'm not. There are tougher people. There are people that have faced extreme changes in their life. We know them, many of them, some of them.
Right,
we,
sure.
we've worked around them. I want her to know that how to love and be loved. And this is a byproduct of who I am. And yes, part of those, the sum of those parts of the sum are who I am when I go out and ride a bike, the joy I have when I'm riding a bike with her, to the giddiness I still get about getting to the top of a hill and going, full face goggles, let's do this. To look at the clock and go, huh, that's quite a bit faster than the last time I did it. You know, I mean, that is who I am. And if I change that, that's not who I am. If I slow down because I get married, if Heidi didn't accept me for everything I am, thick, thin, sick, and hurt, if I had to change that, I wouldn't be the person she married. I wouldn't be your friend.
Is that part of the story that you tell yourself when you're going through difficult times, when you're going through pain? And you're saying you're not tough. I remember you telling me, and maybe I'm wrong in this, when you were going through dialysis, that dialysis was like them hammering a 16 penny nail into your vein for 3 hours. I mean, there's some pain, and we've all encountered pain, and we will all continue to encounter pain. But part of how we make our way through that pain and thrive in that pain is the story that we tell to ourselves. The reason why we're doing this, the reason why we're encountering it, is that how it works for you, and is that something that you can pass on to your daughter?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds funny. It's all really relative. I mean, what we're capable of people, you know, I think people's lack of faith in themselves to survive certain things or tolerate certain things, you know, why we're losing that, or the faith in other people. But that level of toughness, I never set out to be any of this blind Bobby. That wasn't part of my plan. Like I said, bad lawyer, paying alimony already. And you know, there's the tough question is like, do you get used to it? It's not a matter of time before I get sick again or get hurt or something at the transplant or my heart goes south. It's, you know, it can be a matter of time. And it just depends on what degree and the level of percent of survivability. And I consider my opportunity to stay alive pretty good. But the discomfort, the comebacks, you know, it's that, you know, I'm looking at COVID right now and all these restrictions and not being able to do all these things, you know, and I'm looking at, like, I've had more times than I can remember of taking a year to heal up from a cut off toe, trying to get that healed up to go into, you know, the summer camp the next summer, you know, a broken arm. And I mean, that World Cup at Breckenridge, my fucking wrist was broken, dude. I was duct taping a pole to my hand because I'd come back from my transplant. I was 3 weeks before, I was riding a mountain bike on to Whiskey Town, made a bad turn, got off, fractured the navicular, put a cast on it, and we had camp. And then we had the World Cup, and I duct taped my hand to a pole. What we become used to in life, right?
Hold on. So that was 98. So in 98,
Yeah.
you had pulverized your toe and you'd broken your wrist.
That was prior to all that. This was going into Nagano. This was the Breckenridge. Remember the very first Breckenridge World Cup?
Oh, so this was like December. Okay, so this is the December camp.
That's what I mean.
That you broke your wrist going into the December camp.
Yeah.
So your wrist hopefully had healed by the time you broke your toe. By the time you pulverized your toe, stubbing it, trying to get ice for your hurt knee in the hotel.
Yeah, I was golden. I mean, literally, it was like the 2 days, day before I was getting on a plane to go to Breckenridge to prep for the World Cup. I mean, it was like late December. It's great riding out in California then. And it's fitness. That's what I followed my guide. I was training. I mean, that shit happened. But yeah, that was in 98, 90. Yeah.
Yeah. This is December of 97 and then going into the 98 ski season. And what I'm getting from this is part of my question too, is that you forget the pain. I mean, you've encountered some pain, and pain is that thing that puts you in the moment, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how often in our lives are we saying, I want to be in the moment, and pain is that moment that you think, I want to think of something else. Can I distract myself? And you keep coming back to the pain, and you keep coming back to the pain. And I know both of us have experienced some pretty profound pain, but you forget the pain, don't you? Do you forget how profound that pain
Oh,
was?
yeah. And it becomes I've always looked at discomfort and pain as a gauge of healing. You know, it reminds you of consequences, and it reminds you of a lot of things. But more to me, it's like it's that gauge. Are you in pain because of discomfort? Or are you in pain because of an injury? If you're injured and you're getting pain, are you worsening that injury?
Right.
Right. So there's different kinds. And I've always graded that area. I can have some broken ribs and still ride a bike. The biggest risk being you don't want to fall again and really jack them up.
Or puncture a lung or
You know,
something like
that,
that. Yeah.
there's that level of consequence versus, you know, a, they pin up a broken bone, so you're not going to hurt it if they pinned it or plated it. It's not going to shift or anything. So, that pain you get from stepping on it, you're not going to damage it through rehab. But the quicker you can get up on a broken femur, that's plated up or pinned up, that tolerance of like, okay, pain's not as bad, but also, you're agitating an area of injury that part of healing is agitating. And so mine, I'm very guilty of graying that, doing things like with a broken toe and skiing. Was that the smartest thing? Most people would have said, no, going home, not racing, not going to put my broken, shattered toe into a ski boot. I went all Ronnie Lott and said, what's the worst that could happen? Well, Bobby, it could get super infected. You get osteomyelitis and they could cut your goddamn foot off. Oh, that's a risk.
Let's not do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, still, consequence, investment of what I had done. I was skiing well. How the next time I'm going to get to a Paralympic Games was unknown. I'd just come back from a transplant. I risked it. I skied great. I just crashed every race. That happens in careers. That happens. It's not because I wasn't prepared. I didn't crash because of my transplant, having a transplant. I did not crash because my toe hurt. I crashed because it's winter to wear it. Clay would say that all the time. Winter to wear it, and that stuck with me and that resonated with me. And so dealing with that level of pain, does that is there a weird level of comfort? I'm not a sadomasochist, man. I don't like to hurt.
No, I'm saying
I know.
actually that you forget that you go through that pain. It's kind of like women who have babies, right? And they have a baby, and that has got to be some pretty darn
Can't even imagine it.
amazing pain, but they forget enough that they actually have another one. And I think that we as human beings have that ability, that sometimes the fear that we project into the future is that much more debilitating than any pain that we've had in the past, that we go, okay, well, that was pain, and yeah, it hurt. And did it hurt a lot? Yeah, it probably hurt a lot. I don't remember exactly how much it hurt, but I knew when I was in it, it hurt a lot. And we have that ability to kind of move past it.
The reference point of having a child, but also it does go to that cost benefit, evaluate the experience and the horrendous pain that I'm sure every woman does remember, that, whoa, but the child that they have, and to me, wasn't a child. It was like, all right, I I bled through my eyes every day from the time I had my first transplant to get back to the team. They didn't save a spot for me, Chris.
No, I bet
When I
not.
showed up, when I showed up in Hood, I'd been there 2 weeks skiing, and then there was a team camp. It was a whole big bag of, what are you doing here? And a number of athletes said, yeah, we kind of thought you were done. But I worked hard to get to that point. I worked hard at the opportunity to be there, and I was not going to let discomfort or a toe banged up or, well, maybe you should rest another year, with your transplant. No, I was ready. But like I said, with the relationship of a baby and having a reminder of, it's like, I don't intentionally do this to myself, but my life has, and my life choices, and I fully accept every ache and pain I have to the day I die. I expect it. I accept every consequence and bad decision and bad consequence I've had moving through my life and the things I've done. And, it could be a lot worse. I've done this having fun, and, there's a lot of people that never had a choice. And my choice is, all right, I did that screwing around or made a bad turn. People always say, well, God, going through that again. Oh my gosh, you got another comeback. I think overall about the reference of pain and the level of it, having a heartache was a lot worse on me. The idea, losing when those kids passed,
Yeah.
that that's pain. I don't know that I could survive the pain of a divorce. I don't know that I could even consider the loss of a child. I don't know that I have that in me. So this other aspect of my life of injury, sickness, kidneys, transplants, man, there is a whole lot of parts of this that just suck, man. It is just not that fun. Some of these, cancer, that's where your stomach drops and goes, wait a minute. So if you can't cut it out and the radiation doesn't work, you're going to radiate me and it's going to be in my throat. And, I could lose, they already cut lymph nodes out. You start evaluating that. But I don't want to sound cavalier. I've always had that, cut it out. Let's get back to living.
Right.
And maybe the same applies to my threshold of risk in my daily life, my lifestyle. And it applies, to how I take certain precautions, but other than like riding a bike with 2 transplants, what am I risking? If I did not live this way, they should have given the transplant to someone else. If they would have said, Bobby, you need to restrict and you need to do this, man, I would have tried. I said in the movie, and I still believe, and this is me. It's that I've had some tough times, man. But maybe visually impaired people don't do what I don't recommend it. Some are built for it, some are not. My level of toughness is different than others.
But you're honoring that transplant too, right?
I am living, and I will say this again, that I haven't had the opportunity to meet the family, but if they did in either transplant, but if they did, my hope is they would say that he has lived a good life, because I still say it. I'm trying to be the best man I can be, the best person I can be. I realize that gift every day. I realize the gift of medical technology, the gift of friends. It is not a token thing when I say I am so thankful. There's nothing tragic about my life. And if I've got to tolerate some aches and pains and bumps and bruises, man, I know what it's like to puke every single day and have 2 16-penny nails in your arm. I know what that's like. And this isn't a testimony of anything other than my appreciation that I somehow, dumb fucking luck, to be able to tolerate meds that allow me to do something that a lot of people take the same meds and can't do what I do.
Right. And you're taking a lot of 15 pills a day or something, right?
Yeah, it's like 12 in the morning and 14 or 13 at night. But there's the side effects of those things are grave. And do I appreciate that? Oh, yeah. Is it a cavalier thing, the way I choose to live my life? No, I choose to live my life.
No, it's purposeful. It's what you're doing is a purposeful life, a purposeful full life. And I think that's what everybody loves.
And I got to say it, I am not a survivor. Do not confuse me for someone who survived. I live. I choose to live. And I am not, I've learned my history is something for me to remind myself of and to understand and be better at taking care of myself now, or to be better at what I do in my daily life, to be a better father. But, my other experiences, I don't live there. I don't live, you're not going to see me marching down Main Street in a cancer march, because I will not live there. I will live with you, and I will live in the future, and I will live to give 110% to be the best I can be. But it is not up to anybody's standard but mine, because when I look at my daughter, is that if she grows up knowing that I live my life with character and integrity, that it's not being a tough guy, it's being resilient, it's being able to understand what goes on in your life, and that pushing through hardship, no matter how I umbrella dad her right now, because right now, if I can catch her from falling down once, I'm saving her from one skinned knee, because life is going to have 1,000 fucking skinned knees. And that if I can help her to understand that you're going to be okay, and to shake it off, and to give her that appreciation, what, I people can't walk in my shoes and say, I understand what it's like. I fucking hate that. Oh, I understand. My uncle is blind, or blah, 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 or I've had this experience. No, Chris, I can't understand your experience. I can't understand Ella's or Heidi's or other friends. I will never say I understand. I will say, I appreciate that. Let's talk about it and share some experiences. Because you have shared with me a lot and made me a better person from the day I met you. And every time we talk, I glean something off of you. And I'm selfish, man. I'm a mimic. And I see some of my behaviors with my daughter. But going to it, it's that, what can I teach her being able to, I don't just survive stuff. I haven't withstood anything. That life shows up every day. It opens a lot of different doors. Sometimes it's a Fred fucking Flintstone closet. You open it up and shit falls all over you. Get up, shake it off, sort through the mess, open up the next door, and you're getting on a mountain bike and riding with your daughter. With Ella, if she takes away that my dad helped me learn what it's like to be loved and how to love, that she grows up with character, integrity, and honesty, and to be a contributing member of life in her own way, whatever she chooses, then my job is complete. And I want to be here long enough to give her that. All the radness you guys can tell, people can tell her later.
Oh, Bobby, I don't know if we can move forward from that. I think that's like the best possible place that we can end this talk. I think that it really is. I mean, because I look at you and I say, you're somebody, it's so easy to put your laundry list of stuff that you've faced and go, oh, he's done this, he's done that. But the idea that in the face of all of that, you have to live your life fully. You have to live your life with integrity. You have to live your life with commitment every single day. And I think the beauty of what you do in mountain biking is that people get a chance to see that. They might not know the whole story. They might not know how much you see. They might not know all the times that you had to fall down in order to get there. But I think there's a great reminder for all of us. And I mean, you push me and I look at it and go, okay, all right, I see what you're doing, and I see what you bring to the game every day. That's in a lot of ways, that's all we can really hope for. Are we going to win? No. But can we bring the preparation? Can we bring the commitment? And I thank you for being a great friend. I thank you for being a great role model for so many of us. And I mostly just thank you for having fun, for getting out there and having fun and doing what you want to do and figuring out how to actually do that. Thank you for joining us on Living It, Bobby. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, the audience, for everybody that listens. And we should have fun. Smile so much we get sunburned teeth.
That's exactly it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Bobby.